Alrighty. So, anything you want to say before we look at the video? And this is Pablo update, right?
This is Pablo. I've put some, I didn't, my hoof trimmer did. She put some front shoes on him, which you'll see, the
Oh, right.
stick-on shoes,
Mm-hmm.
which, yeah, I haven't really noticed, I don't think for my eye anyway, I don't think I've noticed any difference. So whether or not I've saved my money, I don't know. But I'm keen to get your opinion. And in this session, you'll see I also put some back boots on him, on his back legs. So I probably should have kept them off in hindsight so that you could only see one change at a time, shouldn't I? So that if there is any improvement, is it the shoes or is it the boots? I don't know. Anyway, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
you can try for yourself. We'll have a look. But what I would
yeah,
expect, putting front shoes on, the back shoes, it won't make that big of a difference right now because the front shoes really help when they're just heavy on the forehand and it can get them more
which
comfortable.
he is, isn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
while you're building up the back and the hindquarters, it just sort of usually if they're more comfortable, you get more forward. You get more ease
Mm-hmm.
in your work session. And that's
Yeah.
usually the only benefit you get is if it's helpful. Either the feet
Mm.
have more, like with the shoes on, they can grow more sole, more depth of sole, and it
Mm.
can help
Yeah.
reinforce the hoof wall. So
Yep.
are you coming into your wet season now?
No, our summer's very dry,
Okay.
like really
So
dry.
I was going to
Yeah,
say
and hot.
the other time it can make a difference is during a wet season when the feet are a little bit soft. The shoes can be
Mm.
helpful during a wet season.
Yeah,
Um,
and his feet for the first time this year, they've looked the worst. They cracked quite a few places up the wall, and
mhm.
my trimmer said it's probably a bit of seedy toe. And he's never had it that bad, but we did have quite a wet season. So, but it didn't happen to the other horses, so I'm not sure why it happened this time round for all
It
the, winters he's been here. I don't know.
Well, he's working more, number one. He's kind of back in work. And I
Hmm.
find like I actually would love to get my farrier to do a podcast with me because we instantly bonded when I asked him how he trimmed feet because I said, I don't want somebody who's trying to fix the back through the feet, right? And
Yes.
he has always supported my work because he sees the changes through the feet without watching me ride or without watching me train. And so when you're changing the balance, the impact on the feet will change. And
Hmm.
while he's in a little bit of a tenuous period because he's back in work, but we had not much forward to work with. So without a lot of forward, it's hard to build up the back and the hindquarter quickly. And so,
Hmm.
and even
Yes. Yeah.
even just because he was out of work for so long, it's still going to take time. And so there's going to
Hmm.
be too much weight on his front legs. That's just how it's
Yeah.
going to go
Yeah.
for a little while. And so either
Yeah.
during a wet season, or if your farrier says he has thin soles and sensitive feet, or if the hoof wall is
Yeah.
breaking a lot and he's losing the
Yeah.
integrity of the hoof wall, then the shoes
Yeah.
can kind of help with all of those issues.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I might see what she says. She's due next week or the week after. And then yeah, whether or not I leave them off for summer and maybe put them back on for winter. Anyway, I'll see what you say after having looking at this video too, I
Okay.
suppose.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you don't notice a difference, the best time of year to have the shoes off would be when it's dry and hot.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
when the feet will
Yes.
more naturally get dried out and thickened up.
Yeah. So it'll be dry and hot now until probably April next year. So
Yeah.
I should
So
save my money. Yeah.
so you might try the shoes and let's look at it because
Mhm.
if it makes him more comfortable going forward, then it's useful to being able to get
Mm.
the changes that you want to get. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let me He's looking good. Are those boots or wraps on
Yeah.
his hind legs?
Boots. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
I
it looks
thought you
like
meant,
such a.
sorry, first I thought you meant hoof boots. You mean boots for the
Oh,
legs.
sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it doesn't matter that you have them on because here's our best case scenario. So I'm glad you did that. I thought you meant the
Hmm.
instead of glue on
Oh,
shoes, some people use hoof
oh, I get
boots.
what you mean. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
was picturing when you said you put boots on the back, but no, brushing boots. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so this is really our best case scenario with the hind leg support and the front shoes and the boots you actually
Hmm.
have on him. They're called brushing boots and they don't quite do the purpose that I was sort of intending, but we'll talk about that in a
Oh,
minute. So without
oh,
the,
like the wrap that, and I've watched your video, and I bought some. I just haven't done it. Well, I've attempted, but the polo wraps. That's what you're talking about because they are a bit tighter, a bit
well,
firmer.
there are boots with Velcro that you can buy, but they're typically called sports medicine boots, and they have the same, like on these boots, they drop on the inside of the fetlock so he doesn't knock himself from side to side. But
Yeah.
the sports medicine boots have a wrap. Part of the neoprene is there's a strap that goes all the way under and around the fetlock.
Oh,
So
right. Okay.
it's not just an interference. The importance of it is to restrict the movement of the fetlock.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Does
Yep.
that make
So
sense?
can you excuse me for 1 minute? I've got
Mm-hmm.
my dog tapping at the door and she won't stop until I let her in.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'll be
that's fine.
1 second.
Nope. Okay, let me go back to the share. Okay, so do you understand what I'm talking about? Because these are
Yeah,
the
yeah,
ones you have on him are still helpful because what the boots or the polo wraps do is sort of hold the tendons and ligaments around the cannon bone. It just sort of keeps them more snug. So it does resist some of the
yes,
stress on the suspensory. But what I find stabilizes the hindquarter in kind of a tangible way. It's really a useful thing to do is either the polo wraps where you wrap below the fetlock or the
yeah,
sports medicine boots that have an extra
yeah,
strap. They're like the ones you
yeah,
have on, but they have an extra piece that goes under and around the fetlock and then Velcros.
yeah, okay,
And the only point of really using them on Pablo was to see if again, we're looking at ways that help him feel more comfortable, more stable, so that he can offer more forward. And he's kind of
mm-hmm,
getting it. I mean, he's doing pretty well. So it's not something you need to like rush out and get or make a big deal about. And these will help with the
mm-hmm,
stability a little bit of the hind legs. But when you restrict the up and down movement of the fetlock, what it does is it
yes,
helps the upper joints flex a little more and can ease
yeah, okay,
it can ease the hindquarter into more stability.
yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah,
Oh, he goes, I have to look at the camera.
yeah, he's hoping for a pat. He's like, please let me go over there.
So he's looking good, like coming out, other than his like, glam moment on the runway. He's moving
Yeah.
steadily, which is nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's very slow, but when we consider where he started,
Yeah.
like, couldn't even get 5 minutes, could I?
No,
So
the steadiness
yeah.
of it, slow is fine. It's just the steadiness of the movement is what tells you the balance is improving. The other thing that is really good, um, I know his neck kind of goes up and down a bit, but for the first time, what I see through his neck is more suppleness, less tightness. Like it almost gives you the appearance of
Hmm.
his neck being a little longer than it used to be.
Yeah. Yep.
So that
So it's getting a bit
release,
dark there.
oh, that's okay. Um, that sort of fuller release of the neck while he's moving and staying pretty steady, even though he's careful and slow, that's actually a huge sign of improvement. And he's
Hmm.
he's heavy on the front end, so if the shoes make him more comfortable, like think of the first thing we have to work on to get the forward is stabilizing all of the left right dissipation of force, right? So when you
Hmm.
walk
Yep.
behind him and you're giving him the long range support, you're resisting any of his body weight or his energy from going kind of rolling or tilting left to right. That has the effect of helping him use his core muscles to keep the skull, spine, and pelvis more stable during motion, right? So as we gain that skeletal stability through the midline, we kind of know we're getting it because the muscles release tension as a side effect.
Yeah, okay.
Does
Yep.
that make sense?
Yep. Yep, it
So,
does.
yeah, so when I see more length through the neck, when I see him long and low, but also willing to move forward with a reasonably steady rhythm. Like it's not fast, slow.
So
It's,
consistent.
yeah, the consistency of it is what speaks to the balance. It doesn't matter if the strides are
Okay.
little and if the speed is slow. It's the rhythm that kind of talks about whether
Yep.
or not he's stabilizing the hindquarters.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
And so this looks really good. And how long do you find he's able to work longer?
So we get half hour in. Um, he could probably, even though they're very clever on the time watching, aren't they? They know exactly when the half hour's up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he could probably do a bit more. I'm always running out of time though. I'm always, you know, we have dinner at 8:30 at night because I'm always fluffing around down at the horses. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, the two ways you would notice more forward, quote unquote, if it's not a tangible improvement in speed, because I don't think he's gonna like suddenly go faster. The fact that he's
Hmm.
rhythmic and he's not stopping and his neck is long, that's quite a bit of improvement in his forward capacity.
Hmm.
But the other thing you
Yeah.
might
Okay.
like the other way to sort of tell if the shoes or the boots are worth the effort and the money is if if 30 minutes has been kind of consistent and if he's kind of like at the 30-minute mark, he looks exhausted and then you put the shoes on or you start using the boots and pretty soon at 30 minutes he looks like he could go longer even if you don't have time.
Yeah.
That
Okay. Yeah.
that would be
That's
another
a
way
bit of
to,
a sign.
yeah, just a sign or something that shows you he's getting stronger and he's getting more comfortable in all the right ways.
Yeah, yeah. Something I noticed with when he's wearing the back leg boots, he drags his toe a little bit, and I
I
don't know whether that's yeah.
I would expect he probably drags his toe even without them.
Anyway,
Yeah,
and
but
I just
you
happen to be looking at it more.
probably watching the boots, but I suspect because when they drag the toe, I think we talked about this last time briefly, the stifle and the hock and the fetlock only on the hind legs of the horse are connected with the extensor and flexor tendons. Like those tendons
Mm-hmm.
connect all three joints. And
Yeah.
when they have a little hock arthritis, like he probably does, and he looks kind of
Mm-hmm.
straight through his hocks,
Yeah.
some people say a straight hock is a conformational point, but it can be a functional issue, not necessarily conformation. So when he moves, and this is part of the reason he probably didn't want to move, is his hind legs were a little like wobbly in their movement, but not moving through the joints. Like the joints were locked, so the
Mm.
whole pelvis and hind legs were kind of unsteady. And this steady
Yeah.
rhythm, like we're coming up into 9 minutes on this video, and he is just trucking along. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. That's
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
fantastic. And so when you see
And he
toe,
likes it. Like, look at his face.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
into it, isn't he?
And
Mm.
so the toe dragging always tells you that one of those three joints is not flexing enough, right? So it could
Yeah.
be
Okay.
the
Yeah.
stifle isn't flexing enough. My guess is from looking at it that the hocks are the ones that don't flex enough. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, like
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
Stitch, his fetlocks drop too much. Like
Yeah, they do.
Pablo's,
Yeah.
and that's how that develops, is because if the hocks, and it's like if the whole hindquarter isn't working correctly, either the stifle or the hock joint is going to become restricted, and that's going to put excess strain on the fetlock. So when we use
Mm-hmm.
boots or polo wraps, we're taking the pressure off the fetlock. And because
Yeah.
the flexor and extender tendons connect those three joints, I think you said with Stitch, when you put the boots on, he hiked his legs up and you took them
Yeah.
off. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
exact connection of that. It makes them bend their hocks and their stifles
Ah,
more.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I ended up taking them off Stitch because I thought he was going to get really upset, but maybe I should put them back on and then yeah,
Yeah,
see
try
how he
it
goes.
and see. And with
Yeah.
these boots that you actually have, you're not really restricting the fetlock very much. I mean, you're kind of
Mm.
supporting the lower leg, but not as much as not enough that you're going to increase the flexion in the hock.
Yeah, yeah. So Pablo has his injury is, well, the one that I know of, is his right high suspensory ligament. He did
On
damage that something
the
on
right hind.
his, yeah, right hind. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that was when he was 5 and he's now 11.
Yeah, and
So I
that
don't know
may
if they
be,
they mend and don't know.
well, they do mend and they form a little scar tissue, and they actually can be stronger after they heal than before they not
Okay.
if you get a tear, sometimes it's just a strain, but as it heals, sometimes if there is a tear, you can get a little scar tissue in the healing. But whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
strain or a tear, what happens is the horse rearranges their coordination to
Mm.
underuse the injured leg. And that's the pattern
Yeah.
we've been looking at with him, is he doesn't
Yeah.
use his right hind leg quite as comfortably or fluidly as his left hind leg, even though
Mm-hmm.
neither one of them are really, super at this point.
No.
But he's just steadily, like you've given him, in letting him choose his speed if he's not stopping, he's really worked out a lot more equalness in the hind legs. And
Mm-hmm.
he's using the right hind, like the fact that his neck is long, he's not stopping, he's rhythmic. In this particular
Mm-hmm.
exercise, you're guiding him on the perimeter, but he has to kind of figure out the internal part. And that's
Yes.
exactly, it
Yeah.
looks like he's figuring it out. and he's gotten
Mm.
so much stronger. Like even the last couple of videos that we've looked at, I'm starting to see kind of the fruits of your labors.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Good.
And instead of it being kind of a lot of aids and a lot of like how do I want to say when our aids are sort of big and frequent, that tells us how
Hmm.
little self-carriage the horse has. And you notice
Yes.
like when you're walking, you've done a great job matching his speed, you've done a good job on your end of things, but now what you should be feeling is he doesn't need the same drastic fluctuating corrections. Like he's steadier going around the
Yes.
arena.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just working at it.
Yep.
So I can't tell other than this is probably the best forward I've seen yet out of him, which,
That's
eh,
really interesting because in my mind, and I get it now that you say it's about the rhythm as opposed to the speed, because when we were going around, I'm thinking, oh God, he's so broken. Look how slow he's going. But I'm glad you said that it's about the rhythm, not so much the speed.
oh yeah, and this was actually about the speed my ex dressage horse could go using his hind legs when I first start. Well, even still, he has a very slow walk because his
Yeah.
hindquarters were just so weak. And
Yes,
so,
okay. Wow, and he's an ex-dressage horse. Wow.
yeah, yeah, but
Oh,
he
okay.
was retired as a 9-year-old because he had navicular and ring bone on his front legs. So
Right.
by the age of
Yeah.
9, his hindquarters and back had weakened to the point that he was overconcussing his front legs to a dangerous level. And
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
and rehabbing him, the only way to get the weight off the front legs is what you're doing now, which is keeping the spine straight and level left to right, and then
Hmm.
building up the strength of the back and hindquarters to where they can control their own body weight. So
Yes. Yep.
the purpose of engagement or getting the hindquarters working is so that when they push, they can resist their own body weight, which is how they do two things: unload the front legs, and it's
Hmm.
half of the equation for them to lift the back. So
Yes. Yep.
that's why, like with Stitch, who actually has like his fetlocks and hind legs, because he was probably in work for longer. He has,
Yeah, I bought him as a 13-year-old, and I think he'd been ridden quite a bit before I got him.
yeah, and he was ridden with his back dropped, and so all of that
Yeah.
concussive force took its toll on his hindquarters a little more than
Mm.
Pablo. Like I think Pablo being your horse, when things weren't
Hmm.
going well, you just did nothing, which was,
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes that's the best thing to do because, you go to this trainer and that trainer and this trainer and that trainer, and sometimes it just complicates the problem rather than resolving it. And
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
Pablo, he sort of told you this isn't working for me, and you went, I don't know what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
I had a few trainers, comment about I was riding him once and he was starting to misbehave. And I had a trainer say, I mean, it is what it is, isn't it? But she said, you're going to have to just get up him and whack him. Don't let him do that. He's going to cause all sorts of issues with you. And I thought, no, he's trying to say something. I'm not going to whack him. But she was quite a high level dressage trainer. I don't know what I was doing with her because I don't really know what I'm doing, but yeah, anywho, it's just interesting.
well, and it's the thing that happens is trainers are good at one thing, being effective. Like they know how to get a horse to do something. They're effective at that. But if
Mhm.
it's not coupled with
Yeah.
an understanding of the mechanical nature of the horse, or if they're not interested in going, why is the horse resisting? And they just go, just get harder
Yeah.
and outmaneuver them, then you land
Yeah.
with a horse like I have that is done, right? Washed up,
Mm.
9-year-old, can't do dressage.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
taken me a few years to rehab him because he had so many habits and patterns and layers I had to kind of work through to get the rehab work done. And Pablo, I go, what I
Hmm.
kind of love about him is he's so opinionated, you know, right where he stands. And
Oh,
when
yes.
if you get it right, he cooperates with you. And if you don't get it right, he's not going to cooperate with you. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how a lot of horses like him wind up in the category of difficult. You know,
Hmm.
they just have a harder life if they have a stronger opinion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he's lucky he landed with you because he's a great teacher for you, but also,
Yeah.
you know, this is nothing. I know you thought he would be the harder one to rehab, but I go, he's kind of a blank slate and he's got some physical issues, but there's no massive underlying layers of
Yeah.
complication or anything like that. He's just, as a green
Yeah.
horse,
Yeah.
he's not
Yeah.
exactly what we would call, you know, sort of like, how do I say this? He's one of those maybe awkward kids that needs more help learning to be athletic. Like, and that's the
Yes.
worst thing I could, you know, ever say is that. I go, it's not that he doesn't
Yeah.
have the capacity, but he certainly
Yeah.
wasn't like a natural athlete. He struggled a little.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then add on the injury, and then he's just kind of fallen apart, really.
Yeah. But I don't think
Yeah.
the injury, there's nothing I see at all that looks like the
Okay.
injury is a factor. The only part of the injury that you're working out now is how his body rearranged coordination in order to
Yeah.
protect the leg. And so,
Yes. Yeah.
and that's why they all have
And
to learn how to be straight again.
yeah, and so by compensating, is that probably then what's given him the arthritis over time? Because if he's then using things a bit inappropriately, or would he have arthritis if he's 11? He's, I don't know. I mean, not that he's really done much work other than run around the paddock like a hoon, but
Arthritis is
or is it
just,
hard to say?
it's just inflammation around a joint when the joint is
Hmm.
not, like they used to say that the body won't grow new cartilage, and it's not true, right? Why would the body not
Hmm.
grow new cartilage? But when the forces affecting the joint are not ideal, then what happens
Hmm.
is the body stabilizes the joint. First, it reduces cartilage production and synovial fluid, and then in order to
Hmm.
stabilize the body, it forms arthritis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
movement, correct movement is the medicine for arthritis, really. And I
Hmm.
go, the equiox makes it less painful to go through that process of restoring the function of the joint. So I go, if we can
Hmm.
alleviate pain, that doesn't cure the arthritis. What cures the arthritis is restoring the correct function to the joint. That cures the arthritis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what you're busily doing. Even though it feels very,
Hmm.
very slow, it's like the rhythm that he is showing in this video, the steadiness, and his neck,
Hmm.
even his neck is not getting really high, really low. It's been sort of
Mm.
teetering a little bit
Hmm.
low or a little bit level, a little bit low, a
Yep.
little bit level. And what
Yep.
that's showing you is on the inside, his core muscles are gaining the strength to keep that midline or the skeletal midline stable. And
Yeah. Yep.
and as that gets stable, then the legs can kind of change. The reason I thought the shoes might make him more comfortable, especially during your wet season, is because it's going to take him a little while to build up the
Mm,
coordination and the strength that he can prevent overloading his own front legs.
yeah. Yeah.
And that's why, like with Stitch, trying to get the long reins on a circle where you're working from the inside, what we're doing with that
Mm-hmm.
exercise is it helps it it helps a little more build up the engagement and the proper use of the hind legs when you're doing the
Yes.
long
Yeah.
reins on a circle. But
Yeah.
I go, we got to work with what we have. And
Mm-hmm.
so at this point, you can continue with Pablo with exactly what you're doing. He's just going to keep getting better
Yeah.
and better and better.
Stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if he starts to show, like, the rhythm is always more important than the speed. The speed,
Mm-hmm.
the forward energy of any horse is born out of an equal rhythm first. So horses that go too fast and can't stop, and horses that won't go forward, they lost the equal use of the hind legs, and they lost the rhythm before they go to either one
Mm-hmm.
of those extremes. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
seeing him really, like, where are we? Yeah, we're at 24 and a half minutes, and he's just now
Mm.
beginning to show signs that he might be about done.
Yeah.
So for almost 25 minutes, like instead of where you started with him, it was like you're lucky if you got 3 steps or 10 steps in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I know he just wouldn't walk at all, would he?
yeah,
Mm.
and for him to just stay kind of that steady, even though it's slow, that
Mm-hmm.
steady, equal rhythm with both hind legs, the neck long,
Mm-hmm.
and his neck even sort of stabilizing a little bit out in front of him, not having
Mm-hmm.
nose on the ground, head in the air variations,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And do you think, so I'm doing a few serpentines here and there. Do you think that's helpful for him or better off just
Absolutely.
sticking on the, yeah, okay, because the chain, I suppose, turning just engages their hind end a little bit more, doesn't it?
Yes, it will challenge as soon as you put him on a turn, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
influence the placement of the hind legs. That's really
Yeah.
what it does. So if you
Yeah.
keep the body straight and the back level during any degree of a turn, it just
Yeah.
helps the hind legs come a little closer to the
Yeah.
center of the
And can
body.
I ask,
Hmm.
yeah, that makes sense. And can I see how I'm turning him and I have to kind of turn his head and neck so he's then not kind of straight. Does that matter so much or
For
not really?
now, no, I think it's a good place to get started because
Yeah.
the main thing that's important with him now is kind of keeping the relationship you have when you're walking on a straight line. Is
Mm-hmm.
if you can't quite keep it just like that during a turn, you're going to work your way towards it. But the most important
Yeah.
thing for him is to keep the rhythm. Like if you can keep the
Yes.
rhythm through the turn, that's going to
Yeah.
be kind of the first more important part. And if he gets a little crooked,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't worry about that quite as much.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because he seems sometimes a bit heavy to get round the corner. So I really do kind of have to pull on
Yeah.
his head and neck a little bit to get him around.
Yeah, and that's because when there's a lot of weight on the front legs, they're harder to steer
Hmm.
as well as everything else. And so don't be
Yeah.
worried. Like, I like that you're doing this kind of the last 5 minutes.
Hmm.
Um, that he had most of the session going around the rail with a few turns or changes of direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then now are you doing kind of a big figure eight using the whole arena?
No, I was
Or you're
doing, I pretty well go just around the perimeter, and maybe every second or third one I'll then do a serpentine.
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I would like if the shoes help him, and you'll know at least for this shoeing cycle, every time you work him, if it takes less effort on the rein to go into your serpentine and turn, then that is equal, what it's telling you is less weight on the forehand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Yep.
And if he's motoring around the rail and he's as steady as he is, part of me goes, ooh, do not disturb. Like that's just working. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Just let him
Yeah.
keep doing that. And what I would
Yeah.
look for is if he starts going into a deep long and low and he starts kind of
Yeah.
pulling on you on the reins, or if by
Yeah.
some miracle he suddenly has a burst of energy and speeds up, then
Mm-hmm.
those would be where I would start to put the turns in more frequently.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So if he's going around really consistently with his rhythm, maybe stick on the rail because that's kind of doing quite good work.
At this point, it's kind of like time on the treadmill exercising, but he's exercising
Yeah.
correctly. Now,
Yep.
towards the end is the first time I see that's what I'm talking about. If he goes to put his nose on the ground, he also started pulling and speeding up a little,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
That would be an opportunity to put in a turn in order to help him rebalance. It's going to be
Yeah. Okay.
heavy. It would be really
Yes.
heavy in that moment
Yeah.
because,
The freight train getting around the corner.
yes.
Yeah.
But the
Yep.
more often, like when he's humming around, his neck wasn't changing most of this time. And really only the last little
Yeah.
bit, his neck was changing. Hang on, let me catch it before it. Sometimes YouTube sends me to a different video. I hate that. So,
Oh
like
yeah. Yeah. It does.
if I go back, let me go past his little. So I'm just going to go back to like right around the 5 minute mark. Right. So he's he actually, watching the whole video and then going back, I have to say he picked up a little energy, but it was so subtle I didn't notice it till I went back to the 5 minute mark. But I think by the end of the video,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's a
Yeah.
he's a tiny bit faster than he is at the beginning.
Mm.
So this is 5 minutes
Yep.
into it. And again, the steadiness, and his head's a little low. He's a little wobbly. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't surprise me starting off.
Mm-hmm.
And so then if we jump up to, let's go to 11 minutes. Now the neck is steadier. It's still long, but you see
Mm-hmm.
it's a bit steadier and his rhythm is a little
Yep.
bit clearer. I think it's even picked
Yeah.
up a touch of speed in the last five
Yeah. Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah. And he holds his head a little bit higher, doesn't he?
hmm
Mm.
And then if we
Or maybe
jump,
not now.
well, and we're just taking a quick snapshot, but then if we jump about to the
Yeah.
fif
Yeah.
15, the 15-minute mark. So now on a turn, I might go back and look just before the turn. Let's have a look, 14 and a
Yeah.
half
Because that will
minutes.
slow him down.
Yeah, it's not fair to look at him on a turn. Yeah.
Mm.
So again, not a lot faster, but it just looks more stable and it's steady. It's consistent.
Mm.
And that
Yeah.
consistency with his neck pretty consistent is the balance. Like that's him doing the best he can possibly do. Coming through the corner, he might get a little
Mm-hmm.
slower, or on a turn, he might get a little slower. Down the long sides, if he's kind of motoring, slow but steady is what I mean by motoring, um, then you're just building muscle, stride
Gentle
for
pace motoring.
stride. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I'm very excited. I don't know if you've dealt with them much, but I've got myself a pair of those Sure foot pads.
Oh, uh-huh.
Have you heard of those much?
The ones they stand
Yeah,
on.
I've only yeah. I've only just got them yesterday, so I put him on them well, on one leg just last night just for a quick try. And he instantly just went internal and yeah, it's quite amazing. So I'm really interested to see what that does.
Yeah, my
And I'll update you.
experience,
It's going to
uh,
be interesting to see. Oh, sorry, you go.
yeah, my experience with them is that they're a useful tool for getting horses to explore because it changes a little bit the
Mm.
proprioception, and it can be a really good
Mm-hmm.
tool for them to kind of just explore their own internal coordination. It's pretty good for that.
Mm. Yeah, which I think he could do with a little bit of that, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've only got
Absolutely.
the hard ones first up. I mean, there's a few options and whatnot. So yeah, just the hard ones which they suggest starting off with. So yeah, I shall update you how I go.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you'll see a difference, maybe. Don't know.
Yeah, and kind of like test each thing out too. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
if you've
Mm-hmm.
work him with the front shoes on, but the boots off the hind legs. See how he does.
Mm-hmm.
And then work him one
Yeah.
time. I mean, he's going to have shoes on for a while, but if the shoes are useful in the time he has the shoes, you should start to see that he's much more consistent during work and moving gradually
Mm.
better and better. If
Yeah.
and then if you take the shoes off, if things get worse, you know they were helping more than you thought.
Mm. Yeah. So after you've seen this video then, and if it seems to be improving, then maybe I should leave the shoes on for um a wee while. What's your thoughts?
Um,
It'd be hard to say.
how long has he had them on when you took this video? How long have the shoes been on?
They've been on 2 weeks, I think.
So you worked him maybe three, four times with the shoes on already?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
has he been this steady? Did you find any difference when you put the shoes on as to sort of his like the were your aids lighter? Was he stopping less frequently? Was he a little steadier in work? Because I don't think the benefits are going to
Yeah.
be obvious and drastic. I think it's going to be kind of subtle. And
Right, okay. Yeah. I couldn't really say, to be honest. I yeah, not that I noticed.
okay. Well,
Mm.
from my
But then
perspective,
I didn't notice this until you pointed out the consistency of his rhythm. So maybe I just completely missed it.
yeah, I know it feels so slow that we think we're not getting anywhere because it's slow. But he's very
Mm.
carefully, he's a lot, if you look through his top line, like as we go back, if we looked at some of the past lessons, he always has a little bit of wigglediness to his movement,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like through his back, through his hindquarter, or kind of like a little extra movement through his legs. This is the first time where I see him stabilizing, sort of
Mm.
head to tail, less movement through his back. We talked about the neck, less
Mm-hmm.
movement through the neck, less movement through
Mm-hmm.
the back, a lot less movement through the pelvis, and the hind legs are just steadily pushing and braking, like just kind of, even though It's not a full perfect use of the hind legs. It's pretty
Hmm.
darn good for where he's coming
Hmm.
from. He's stepping
Yeah.
under, he's pushing back, and it's just a nice, stable rhythm the whole time. So, with all those things said, from the last
Hmm.
time I looked at Pablo, this is a really nice improvement. This is like,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, this is a
Yep.
tangible, noticeable improvement. It's subtle, but it's definitely noticeable.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
if anything, from here on, if you have those things he can stand on, you've got front shoes and you've got boots and he's on Equiox. Maybe leave all of
Hmm.
those things the same.
Yes. Yep.
Leave all of those factors in place for like a month, or for his shoeing
Hmm.
cycle is 6 weeks, right?
Yep. Yep.
So kind of keep doing what you're doing, leave it all the same for 6 weeks. And then
Hmm.
after 6 weeks, you could, if you're going to take the shoes off, try him for a time without the shoes if you're coming into a hot, dry season. If it's
Hmm.
wet, leave the shoes on. If it's still
Yeah.
wet, leave
Yep.
the shoes on. But if it's really dry in
Hmm.
6 weeks, then you could try going one cycle, 4 to 6 weeks without the shoes, and see if you get
Yeah.
anything worse or better.
Yep.
Yeah. And if
Yep. Good.
it's
Good.
no worse, then you might not need the shoes. But right
Yeah.
now,
Yep.
I'm not sure which factor is helping, or if it's just because all the work you've done, or a combination of everything, but this is pretty good.
Hmm.
Like this is,
Yay.
yeah, this is really a noticeable improvement for him.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
the forwardness always comes out of stability. So rhythm is one way we see stability during motion. The how he
Hmm.
uses the head and neck is another way we see stability during motion. The aids being lighter and less frequent is the feeling of stability during motion. And then we kind
Hmm.
of see his body just doesn't have a jangly, awkward,
Hmm.
excess kind of movement to it. It's just looking like
Yeah.
it's flowing.
Yep. Yep.
So all of that's fantastic. So maybe just leave it alone for 6 weeks while the shoes are
Yeah.
on,
Yeah. Good
and just,
idea. Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
carry on, let
Yep.
him get strong. And then as if you want, you can start peeling away pieces and see if they make a difference or don't make a difference. But I think with Pablo, I don't know if you
Hmm.
know it really makes a difference for at least 2, maybe 3 weeks. Like I think it has to be kind of a consistent change before you rather can tell if it's working or not working.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Fair enough. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go.
There you go. Well done.
Thanks.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
And
I do love him.
yeah, he's such a character.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
think,
Cute of him.
yeah, like the way he's progressing now, I go, he's just, yeah, there's some arthritis, there's an old injury, but I don't see anything that makes me think he can't completely rehabilitate. Like I just see him now steadily going
Yeah.
the right direction.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. That's such good news.
And the good news is really that it hits a certain point where all of this sort of patient repetition and slogging, his body will get to a point of strength and stability where then the changes start to happen faster. But right
Yeah.
now, you're
Yep.
having to kind of get him to that point, and then it kind of
Yeah.
gains momentum and things go a lot faster. But you've just done a
Yeah.
fantastic job sticking with him. This is awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, I think we're doing quite well. So would you suggest if his pace is steady up until the 30-minute mark, try and push it out to 40 minutes? See how we go?
You could, yeah, because
Yeah.
he didn't
Yeah.
show even, he didn't show a single sign of fatigue until we got into the
No.
last like 25-minute mark. And that might have just
Hmm.
been him kind of going tick-tock, we're at 30
Yeah,
minutes,
that's the other thing
you
as
know?
well, isn't it? They just know, don't they?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if he's kind of
Mm.
steady like that right up to the 30-minute mark, even if you have to quit
Mm.
at 30 minutes, you know he's getting more forward. If he still gets
Mm.
a little
Yeah.
tired, maybe it's just the time, maybe it's he is actually
Yeah.
getting tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you
Fair
have
enough.
the time, push it an extra 5, 10 minutes and see how he does with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good.
And you don't
Lovely.
have to do it
All right.
regularly, but I think that's good. I know you probably have to get
Awesome.
to work. Let me stop the
Yeah, I better.
recording.